Good day, everybody. So today we're doing or starting a engine swap on a F-150 5.4 Triton, dreaded 3-valve 2008. So the reason we're doing an engine swap is because on the second cylinder on the passenger side, the compression was at about 15 pounds, and that's not good. He did break a spark plug off in it. We do have a new engine and I'll show you that in just a second. You have to excuse the shop, it's a little messy at the moment, but this is the engine right here. We got it from Blackwater Engine, I believe. They're not a sponsor or anything, but they did send it crated real nicely. They got it here in decent time, but we're going to be doing this engine swap. It's probably going to be a few videos because it's just not going to be like a 10-minute job that we're going to do. But I'm not going to go detail by detail of how to do this, like show you every nut and bolt that I'm going to take off, but I'm going to kind of explain what needs to come off, then I'll take it off and show you what we need to do next. I'm gonna do it kind of little steps like that. But I got my tools and everything there ready, and the first thing I'm gonna do is drain the coolant. So let me grab my tools real quick and I'll show you where the drain plug is on this, and we'll get started. Right, like I said, we're gonna drain this radiator real quick, and the drain valve is on the passenger side and it's down here. I don't know if you can see where my hand is. Let me see if I can get you better. It's right there. It does have a hex nut on the top. You can use a socket, or you can use a pair of pliers. I'm gonna see if I can get it with a socket real quick, and I'll let you know what size it is. Okay, I got a socket on it. It is a 19, and normally you can twist them with your hand. They're normally not super tight. And once you do that, you can come over to the driver's side and break the cap off of your overflow tank just so it gets some air in it. And then it should start coming out of the radiator after that. And I do have a drain pan underneath here to try to catch it. But we're going to let that drain, as you can see right there. We're going to let that drain while we start taking off some stuff on top. First thing I'm going to do, as you can see, this has like an aftermarket air intake system. We're going to take this air intake system off. It's just a connector right there. Then they got this tube on the side, if I can get it out. Yeah. Ooh, that was a little tight. And we're going to take, there's a hose clamp right here, and we're going to take this hose clamp off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this out, and once I get it out, I'll show you all the other little bolts that we have. Alright, so we got the air filter and tube off. The only other ones I had to take off was those two right here, and then one on the fan shroud, the upper bolt for the fan shroud. It went through the fan shroud and went through the other bracket that held on the aftermarket intake. But what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to disconnect the battery, get it out, then I'm going to pull the intake out on this. There's going to be some sensors on the throttle body. You'll have to do the fuel rails, which has the fuel lines. You have some crankcase ventilation lines you'll have to take off, and I'm probably going to go ahead and take off the heater hoses and the main upper radiator hose just to do that, because that'll be easier and get it out of my way. And then we'll have some of these injector connectors right here as well, and then we can start pulling the actual intake off. And I do believe there's 8mm bolts. I don't know exactly how many. It's been a while since I've removed the intake on one of these. But once I get it off, I will show you what it looks like without it, and I'll tell you exactly what all I had to take off and show you where that's at. Alright, I just want to give y'all a little update. I haven't taken the intake off yet, because to do this I'm going to remove the alternator just to make it easier on me, because that's going to have to come off anyway, and that way that this center section in here can just come straight out through there. It'll just make it easier on me because of that. And as you can see, I had to take the throttle body off because there is a connector. I'll show it to you right here. There's a connector right there, and you can't get to the bottom of it too good without taking that off, and it's only 4 10mm bolts, so I went ahead and took that off. Also, I took the heater hose off, took all the injector connectors off. This PCV valve right here, which has this type of connector right here, like all you do is push down and out and it should clear. And then the fuel pressure regulator sensor, or fuel pressure sensor, took off the fuel line. And then I took the battery out, disconnected the alternator already, took the fan off. To do that, I used this tool right here. I know everybody doesn't have air in their shop, but if you do, I would recommend getting one of these. This is a pneumatic fan clutch tool. Works great on an air hammer. It uses a 1 7/8 size on the fan clutch. I have it right here. And there is one connector on it as well, and it just rides along with the clutch and the fan assembly. Then I removed the radiator and fan shroud after I took that off. And to get these transmission lines off, they're a little bit different than most quick disconnects. I use this tool right here. I don't have the exact part number on it. I mean, right here just has a patent number, but I'll get the exact part number for this for everybody. But if you look down in there, it has a recessed area, and it goes around that little notch on the top, because these Fords are a little bit different on the transmission lines. It doesn't have like a smooth transition that goes. It has this little notch right here, but you're going to need this right here that's recessed, that just slides onto it. As you can see right there, the bottom one had a little bit of rust I had to pick off before I could get it inside, but that's not going to be your case at like all times, because you may not have rust on yours, but mine did, so I had to pick it off. And now I'm at the point where I'm going to take the belt off, and as you can see, his belt's cracked pretty good. He's going to have to get a new one, which I'm going to do a lot of hoses. He's already got a new heater hose on here. I'm probably going to do upper and lower radiator hoses, just because he did have a lot of rust in his coolant, and I don't want to transfer that over too much to the new engine, just because it's going to be a new engine and we don't want to mess that up as little as possible. And I'm going to back flush the radiator as well. Trying to see if I can get this in here, but I was going to show everybody how to take the belt off. So the tensioner's right here on the passenger side. Push down on it and you can take the belt off. And it uses a 1/2 inch drive, ratchet, pry bar, whatever you want to use, or belt tool, whichever one you prefer to use is up to you. But I just used the pry bar just because it was easy at the time to get to it, which I still need to release some tension on it just because I didn't get it all the way off. Come on, get back in there. I got it that time, but it's just a little difficult to do one-handed. And these Ford belts, they go like on the tensioners like backwards, so a lot of times it's hard to get them off of that. Come on. There we go. But as you can see, his belt's cracked pretty good, so we're gonna get him a new belt. But I did that just so I can take the alternator off. To take this alternator off, what I'm going to do is remove this brace on top, because that's attached to the water neck, and then there's going to be two 10mm on the bottom as well. But we're going to pull this off real quick and probably get this crossover pipe off too, just so whenever I get the intake, as you can see it's loose, and there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 10mm bolts that hold this intake on, but there's some wires on the back that is holding it up too, because it attaches to the back of the intake, so you're gonna have to take those off. But once I get this off, I will show you a better view of it once it's off. But let me go ahead and start pulling this alternator off and try to see if I can get the intake out, and then we'll be right back. I got the intake out now, so here's a better look at it. Once you get it unbolted and can move it around a little bit, there is a hose connector on the back. That's another like PCV connector. Then there's your stepper motor right here, or your intake flat motor, whichever one you want to call it. But there's a connector on the back. I lifted it up and then got my hand underneath here. Then your knock sensor wires are going to be underneath there as well. And the one I had, it actually went around the cable right here, or rod right here, so I had to disconnect it and reroute it from around this, because it was wrapped around it like twice. So I don't know if somebody's had this off before. Guessing somebody has, and they wrapped it up by accident and didn't mean to, or what. But here's your bolts. They do come out, but I'm gonna leave them in here just so I know where they go, and just keep up with all the bolts. But there's one right here. You go in through each of the fuel rail pieces. There's two of them on each one of those. One in the center and then one right in the front. And the ones in the front, this actually goes through your to help hold on your crossover tube for your water neck. I do have it out as well, and this is what it looked like whenever I took everything off. Like I said, this wire goes to your temp sensor on your head, and then your knock sensors right here, they were like wrapped around that rod like that, so I had to unwrap that. And then that's where that PCV valve hose went right there. It is a little difficult to get that one off. Sometimes they'll slide off pretty easy, but getting clamps in there or pliers in there to take that off can be a little bit of a challenge. But you have a couple connectors on the back, and you can see that little bracket piece right there. That's the 10mm that holds it onto the back of the intake. But we have it to this point now, and the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking off the power steering pump and disconnecting the AC compressor, and trying to get all the brackets and stuff off for the actual valve covers and stuff, because I'm gonna have to take the valve covers off anyway to swap them over to the new engine. The new engine does come with all the gaskets you need: intake manifold gaskets, valve cover gaskets, your thermostat, crossover pipe gaskets, and maybe it, cause it's already got an oil pan on it, got the timing cover on it. I do not believe it has the harmonic balancer. I'd have to check again, but I'll check that again, so I'll let y'all know. But here's the crossover pipe right here. Well, I can keep from spilling too much water, but this is it right here. And as you can see, the gaskets on the bottom, they are like a 1/8 inch thick plastic gasket with the rubber around it, and they just snap in right there on the top. But thermostat goes into this as well. But I'm just going to keep all this stuff together just so I know where everything goes. I'm going to try to keep bolts and stuff that I can keep out where they all go as well. But we're going to keep going on this. By the end of the day, I want to try to at least have it ready to pull out tomorrow, because I did get kind of a late start today because it's probably 11 o'clock now, and I know I got to go somewhere later today as well, so I won't be able to pull it out. And plus I want to keep tension off of the transmission as long as possible, so if I can get it to where all I have to do is pull the engine out, grab the new one and stick it back in just to keep the transmission up and start some bolts, I feel better about that, because I don't want to mess up that transmission mount either. And I know I can keep a jack under it, but I just don't like keeping it underneath there that long. But one thing I did discover was a bolt in the intake valley. It don't look like it's been there all that long, because it's not rusted up or anything like the rest of the valley part is. But I have to check to see if he did anything and make sure it didn't mess up or he dropped something down into the engine. It could have been from somebody who did the intake. They could have dropped something down into the engine and caused the spark plug and stuff to go bad. But it was this cylinder right here that had low compression. Like I said, it only had like 15 pounds, and I was doing it wet or dry, so I didn't increase it at all whenever I made it a wet compression test. But every other cylinder had really good compression. He actually drove it over here today too. But like I said, let me get back to it and keep on it, and as I go along, like I said, I'm going to keep posting y'all up, keep updating y'all on what all I took off. But like I said, we're going to get the power steering pump off, all the brackets, and disconnect all the sensors and stuff that I can up here. Okay, so I wanted to give a day one end update, I guess you could say. So I have all the bell housing bolts except for one off, and it's the one that goes into the top of the starter. All of the bell housing bolts are 13 millimeters. You can get the top two after you take the intake manifold off, and then when you go to do the exhaust manifolds, just take off the collector nuts. They are 15 millimeters. You will need at least a semi-deep socket, and if you use an impact and let them soak in penetrating oil for a little bit, you should be able to get those off. I got all of mine off already, so that's free. And the torque converter bolts, if you take the cover off on the bottom, I'll show you what that looks like. This is the cover on there. It's held on with two 13 millimeter bolts as well. But if you take that off, you can get a wrench in there, and you can get a 14 millimeter, which is the size for the torque converter nuts. This is what they look like right there. Like I said, they are 14 millimeters, and you can get those through the inspection plate. You do not have to do it through the little hole, inspection hole underneath the driver's side manifold. You can get it through the inspection plate right here if you use a 14 millimeter wrench. But the next thing that I need to do is I got to take the motor mount bolts off on both sides. The driver side is different from the passenger side. Passenger side has two that comes in from the bottom up, and then the driver side comes in from the tailgate forward. And I do not know what size that one is. It is pretty big. Looks like probably about a 22-21 millimeter, while the other ones look like they're probably about a 21-22 millimeter as well. Like I said, I haven't checked to see what size that is. But once we get those out of the way, we should be able and ready to pull the engine out. Now I'm gonna have to take the hood off. That's the only other thing. And to take the hood off, it's just two 10 millimeters right here, and then the hood shocks. All you have to do with that right there is you can get like a white paint pen or something and mark around the actual piece right here, and you should be able to line it up back to where it was originally, or close to it, so you don't get the hood off whenever you get ready to put it back on. But like I said, that's pretty much the end of day one. We pretty much have it ready to pull out. The power steering bolts were a little bit of a pain. The bottom one right here was already out. These three right here were still in it. They were 10 millimeters. The back one on this side was a 10 millimeter with a long stud on it, so you had to use a deep socket to get it. It can be a little bit of a pain to get to, just because of the tube that runs to this right here, or the hose that runs down to the water and oil filter location. I did take the oil filter off, as you can see, just to get this bolt out right there for the power steering pump. Then the AC compressor had to come out as well. He did have the AC drained before he brought it over, because I do not have a machine. I don't know if I said that earlier or not, but I will let you know that now. But I took both hoses off as well. I took it off right here where it goes into the dryer, and then I disconnected it from the actual compressor itself. And then I took this hose right here off after I got it unbolted from the actual engine. And here's your wiring harnesses right here. I know I'm leaving something out. I gotta be, that I didn't show. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna climb underneath here real quick and show you what it where the torque converter bolts are, and what the collector looks like real quick, just so you know. And then I can probably even show you what the bolt for the motor mount looks like. So let me climb underneath here real quick. Before I show y'all underneath the truck, I just want to show you, this is all the stuff I had to take off. This is the intake, this is the air cleaner, there's the alternator, power steering pump pulley. I did forget to mention, you have to remove that with a puller. I think it's the same one that the GM uses to pull off, but it has a different thread pitch on the inside whenever you go to push it back on. There's upper radiator hoses, the fan, air intake tube. Here is the AC compressor. Like I said, you got 3 bolts on it, 1 on the top, 2 on the bottom. Here's the oil filter housing and lower radiator hose and reservoir hose adapter. It goes on something like this, but there's 4 10 millimeter bolts I hold that on. And then these are the power steering pump bolts. So that right there is your collector bolts. I don't know if I can get my hand in here so I can show you right here. There's 2 15s, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. I did have to take the cover for the shifter off. That was just 2 10 millimeters. And then here's an inspection hole, but as you can tell, I got my hand going inside. That's where that cover goes, and you can get the torque converter bolts out from right there. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the torque converter hitting the flywheel. So it is all out, and I think that's pretty much it. Let me see if I can show you the bolt for the motor mount. So that is the driver's side right there, that big one. Like I said, I don't know what size it is. It looks like about 21 to 24 millimeter. Like I said, I still have to take the starter out. I just have 1 bolt in the bell housing. It's all the way at the top. I don't know if you can kind of see it right there, but those 2 nuts right there are the other motor mount. Like I said, they look like they're probably 21 22 millimeter as well. I do have to take those off, and once I get those 2 nuts, the other motor mount bolt, and then this upper bell housing bolt that holds the starter in, once I get that out, the engine will be ready to come out, and I will show the engine coming out of it in the next video and me putting it back in, so that way we can kind of see how it needs to come out. But I appreciate you watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And until the next video, y'all have a great day.